Hello everybody, and today I'll be doing a tournament recap of the Full Grip Games Destined Rivals Gym Leader Challenge 3K tournament. So starting off with the metagame, there were 87 players total. The field was mostly Psychic, but it was not nearly as dominant as Colorless was last time, and Psychic was such a big popularity, I think, because it's just such a versatile type. There's multiple different ways you can play it, and most of the ways that you can play Psychic end up feeling very strong, and if you build it correctly, can be very consistent. So big portion was Psychic. There was 16 Water, 13 Dragon, 7 Colorless, 6 Dark, 6 Grass, 5 Lightning, 3 Fire, 3 Fighting, and then 1 Metal. So starting off with 8th place, we have Lightning Spread, piloted by Austin Charles. This deck focuses on looping things with the double Dynamotor in Flaffy and Electric, and then taking multi-prize turns with Regieleki with the Terra Spark for 2 Lightning and a Colorless. It's 120 damage to your opponent's active Pokemon, and then you discard all Lightning energy from the Regieleki and do 40 damage to 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Electivire has the High Voltage Current for 2 Lightning and a Colorless. That does 50 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon. And then Tapu Koko has Flying Flip for double Colorless. It does 20 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon. So you have a very, very strong spread package. You have ways to come back. You have ways to shut off your opponent's abilities and get through their bench barrier in Silent Lab and Hexmaniac. And this is overall just a very powerful deck. So 7th place was Special Whales, piloted by Otto Shaw. The deck focuses with the Cetitan and the Wailord, both of which do more damage if they have a special energy attached. And then it utilizes counter energy, reversal energy, splash, and wash energy to activate those effects and do big damage while providing bonus effects along the way. Reversal and counter energy both provide more energy while you're losing. And then splash lets you put the Pokemon, if it was knocked out by damage, it lets you put the Pokemon it was attached to back into your hand. And then Wash prevents all effects of attacks done to the Pokemon that the card is attached to. I think it's interesting that this deck is running the Power Draw Swampert, which once during your turn you can discard a card from your hand to draw 3 cards, as opposed to the Octillery that's typically played in Water that just lets you draw until you have 5 cards in your hand. But I think that's a good choice in this deck because you don't have any like Rain Dance acceleration. You don't have Frostmoth or Baxcalibur to thin your energies out of your hand. So you can maybe brick with some of the hands, and it's a lot better to just discard a card from your hand to draw 3 more cards. It can potentially just see you more cards throughout the game, and in a deck like this where you want to have enough cards in your hand to give yourself options against what your opponent's doing, I think it's a very solid draw option. Next up is Dragobox in 6th place, piloted by Spencer Baton. He was here last time. There was Regidrago, Raging Bolt, Reshiram. He did cut the Kyurem this time, so I thought that was interesting. You'll see later that a couple of the decks that placed higher did play Colress, so I'm curious how big of a part that Kyurem would have played, which, if you don't know, it has the Trifrost attack, which for 5 energy, 2 water, 2 metal, and a colorless does 110 damage to 3 of your opponent's Pokemon. But it has an ability where if your opponent has a card named Colress in their discard pile, it can use the attack for just 1 colorless. So you can really devastate your opponent if they decide to play a Colress. The deck's just very consistent, only playing 6 basic Pokemon and a whole bunch of items that you can thin out of your hand to draw with the Regidrago's Dragon's Horde, which once during your turn, if it's in the active, you can draw until you have 4 cards in your hand. Raging Bolt is an absolute menace with double Dragon energy. If your opponent is playing 60 HP basics, you can attach double Dragon, snipe a 60 HP basic, and then you can attach another energy, snipe a 90 HP support Pokemon maybe, and then you attach one more and you can snipe a 120 HP. And that can really just take some things out of the game, especially if you combine it with Lost City. You can permanently lost zone some of their attackers so they can't get it back and just run them off the board. Next up is Munkidori Psychic, piloted by Brooke English. This is very, very similar list to what she played last time. There are only 2 differences. The Iron Boulder was swapped in, and the Parallel City was swapped in. The cuts were the Bench Barrier Mr. Mime and the Avery. I think this archetype is very, very well positioned. It's just got so much it can do. There's so many lines you can take, and your opponent can't really count for them all. So as long as you pilot the deck like solidly, it can take you really, really far. Giratina with the Distortion Door once during your turn. If it's in your discard pile, you can put it onto your bench. If you do, you put one damage counter on two of your opponent's bench Pokemon, and then Shadow Impact for two Psychic and a Colorless does 130 damage, and you put four damage counters on one of your Pokemon. Now, that can be helpful with the Munkidori with the Adrenabrain ability, where once during your turn, if this Pokemon has any Darkness energy attached, you may move up to 3 damage counters from one of your Pokemon to one of your opponent's Pokemon. So that turns the downside of Shadow Impact into just 30 more damage that you get to spread on your opponent's side of the board. And that can line up some two-price turns, attack with the Giratina, potentially take a knockout, set up damage for Munkidori, so that they either have to deal with the Giratina or they have to deal with the thing that you just put damage on that you'll be using the Munkidori to throw the damage back at them. And then Crispin is in the deck to accelerate the basic darkness energy into play, because you can get a basic darkness energy attached to Munkidori and put a psychic into hand, and then you can accelerate the psychic with Xatu and draw two cards. So I think Crispin's a really, really cool combo piece in this deck. In fourth place was Trevor Redding piloting a Hydro Pump deck. He made it to the finals of the last 1K and decided to run a Hydro Pump at this one. I think this is a very interesting list. There's the Wailord with the Hydro Pump attack that does 10 plus 50 for each water energy attached to it, and it has a massive 240 HP, so that can just be really difficult for your opponent to deal with. You have the typical accelerators of Baxcalibur and Frostmoth paired with Octillery and Inteleon for consistency. The attackers, you have Kyogre, Lapras, Wailord, and Wishiwashi. The Wishiwashi has 180 HP and the Scatter ability, where at the end of your opponent's turn, if it has any damage counters on it, you flip a coin. If tails, it gets shuffled back into your deck and all cards attached to it. Trevor is playing the Colress, which lets you shuffle your hand into your deck and draw a card for each benched Pokemon, both yours and your opponent's. But if there were any Dragon gym leaders that he ran into that were playing Kyurem, that could have been really devastating for him to play around and not use a very, very powerful supporter that he has in his deck. The two interesting inclusions that I wanted to point out were Silent Lab, which is a stadium that shuts off all basic Pokemon's abilities in each player's hand, discard, and in play. I thought that was pretty interesting because Trevor also plays Green's Exploration, which you can only use if you have no Pokemon with abilities in play, and you search your deck for up to 2 trainer cards, reveal them, and put them into your hand. So the problem with playing the Wishiwashi and Green's Exploration is Wishiwashi is a basic. So if you start Wishiwashi, you don't get anything else, and you have Green's Exploration in hand, you can't play it. But if you get Silent Lab, you can shut off your own Wishiwashi's ability to play Green's Exploration. I don't think that was the main reason the card got put in here. It does shut off a lot of very powerful things like Okidoki in fighting, but I think Silent Lab is just a generally interesting inclusion, and it worked for him to play in his Hydro Pump list. Next up is Dusknoir Psychic, piloted by Ashton Waite. This got third place. The deck, kind of just straightforward, simple Psychic. Curse Blast Dusknoir, once during your turn you can knock it out and put 13 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. The Buddy Catch Gallade lets you search your deck for a supporter once during your turn, put it in your hand, and then Swirling Slice for a Psychic and 2 colorless does 160, and you move N energy from the Gallade to one of your bench Pokemon. And then Malamar and Xatu are in here for consistency. Galarian Articuno's in here as a backup attacker, along with Mewtwo, Mimikyu, and the Bide Barricade Wobbuffet. There's Mr. Mime in here for some bench barrier. Overall, the list is just really consistent, and if it gets going, it's pretty difficult to stop and can run away with games. In second place, we have Ursaluna Control, piloted by Lion Chen. He took a really interesting, more turbo approach to playing Ursaluna Control. So the whole point is the Ursaluna with the Pete Hunt. For one colorless, you put up to two cards from your discard pile into your hand. So this lets you loop all sorts of disruptive things, Reset Stamp, Palpad, and VS Seeker to get your resources back. You can reuse Luxurious Cape and Max Potion, Luxurious Cape, if they knock it off, you can just get it back, and it puts your Ursaluna up to an effective 280 HP. And then Max Potion lets you heal all damage from one of your Pokemon, and then if you do, you discard all energy from that Pokemon. But if you play Recycle Energy and you attach it to your Ursaluna to use Pete Hunt, when you use Max Potion, the Recycle Energy goes back to your hand, so you can just put it back on the Ursaluna and Pete Hunt again for the Max Potion back. This deck doesn't play too many supporters. The Clay is a very interesting inclusion. It discards the top 7 cards of your deck, excepting the item cards, which get put into your hand. There's Pokestop in here, which is a similar effect to Clay. On a Stadium, you discard the top 3 cards of your deck and put any items in your hand. There's Scoop Up Net to reset some abilities. Fan Rotom lets you, it's a very good search card on the first turn of the game, and then it can be an effective attacker, and you can kind of run away with games. If you go Fan Rotom with Lost City, and you Lost City a couple of their key Pokemon that they want to have in play to set up more, you can just Lost Zone them and be done with it. There's Trekking Shoes and Acrobike are more turbo cards. There's a whole bunch of Ball Search for consistency. There's Gormandize Snorlax, which once during your turn, if it's in the active, you can draw until you have 7 cards in your hand, and it ends your turn. This list is just very good at controlling and locking down what your opponent wants to do. In first place, we have another Hydro Pump list piloted by Chucky Davis. This one takes a more tank and heal approach with the Wailord again, 240 HP. You can buff that up to 340 HP with Luxurious Cape, and if your opponent can't one-shot it, you can pick it up with Acerola, rebench the Wailmer, and potentially just do it again, which can be absolutely devastating to just deny your opponent 2 prizes like that, and probably take a prize with the Wailord because it can just dish out so much damage. There's Arizu, which I wanted to talk about. Arizu gets you 3 evolution Pokemon. It is limited to non-Roblox cards, which does not matter because this is GLC, and non-Roblox cards are the only cards that are allowed. So this just gets you 3 evolution Pokemon, which can get you a Drizzile, a Baxcalibur, and maybe your Wailord. You can evolve into Wailord, evolve into Drizzile, Drizzile for Rare Candy, Baxcalibur, and you're already basically just set up. One of the differences from Chucky's list to Trevor's list is that Chucky is playing the Beacon Alolan Vulpix, which lets you free attack, lets you search your deck for up to 2 Pokemon, reveal them, and put them into your hand. Trevor was playing the Hisuian Basculin with the Gather the Crew, a free attack that lets you search your deck for up to 2 basic Pokemon and put them on your bench. So Chucky was focusing more on getting Pokemon into his hand to evolve more, and then Trevor just wanted to get Pokemon onto the bench to play the game. Chucky is playing both Luxurious Cape and Pot Helmet to potentially get some double damage reduction. You can go Luxurious Cape on the Wailord and Pot Helmet on something else that you maybe don't want getting Snipe KO'd, like the Frostmoth, which is a bit thinner with only 90 HP, so you can attach the Pot Helmet to maybe reduce the amount of damage your opponent's doing with snipe attacks, because the list does not play Manaphy. The Splash Energies in here put the Pokemon back in your hand when it gets knocked out. The Pokemon lineup is like very, very similar to Trevor's. They both, I believe it's essentially the same, save for Alolan Vulpix and Hisuian Basculin being swapped for each other. But I think it was super cool that 2 Hydro Pump lists made the top 4 that were super similar. It just goes to show how consistent that water is. So I'll leave a couple links in the description. I'll leave all the deck lists shown, the official Gym Leader Challenge website, which is a great place to go to see more decks, and they have great starting lists there. And then I'll leave the full video of the tournament if you want to go watch any rounds. I think it's a great thing to go just watch people play the game. You can see how they play and improve your own game off of it. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.